economically demanding and will require these particular individuals to have an extra kind of income generating activity. We feel these are inherently individuals who will end up at the end of the day, if they do not have such a kind of a chance or an opening, these are individuals who will opt for things like theft at the end of the day because they need to earn an extra buck. Why that is inherently wrong is then these are individuals who already have the belief in their who already have a belief in the moral kind of organization of society, and they want to uplift that belief and keep on holding it up. Like, we feel particularly when we do not actually address the things that are inherently in status quo, things like this, it means a lot of individuals in status quo are going to be living in status quo, but then they'll have to opt out of their beliefs in order to get things like money by doing things like theft and murder. That is why we have a whole rising number of individuals who opt out of their beliefs of being very moral to society as they were raised, as they believe, in order to earn things like money and whatsoever. I'll take it.
I trying to say that there is no other way for this people to earn money honestly if they don't sell their credit tokens apart from crime.
We feel particularly this is not an inherent kind of way that these are individuals that they are selling other like these things in order to promote crime. No, we feel this is an incentive for them to actually earn more credit, and inherently it solves everything that happens in status quo. Particularly, we tell you these are these are people who work a lot and they have a lot of things on their schedule. It means they don't have a lot of time that is left. But then what happens then is then if they do not get, because of society being very demanding, if they do not get an opening elsewhere, they are going to resort to things that are like theft or whatsoever. But then also, even if you were to talk about taking second jobs and whatsoever, we feel a lot of individuals that are middle class earners already have more than one job, already even more than 3 jobs, and they still do not earn more, and yet they have a credit score of 100. For particularly, that is inherently very wrong, because at that particular point the credit score does not actually help them, so they have a better or a higher likelihood of actually opting out of that kind of system and trying to be thieves or whatsoever, because they already have a credit score. Now they need to feed their families, but then they do not have money for it. Well, we feel like there are individuals that are in status quo that could buy this particular thing with individuals instead of that want it for prestige, that want these particular things in order to boss around, but then also in order to earn value, because there are individuals or entrepreneurs in society who need a lot of buy-in from society, who need a lot of people to understand that, hey, Bill Gates has the highest credit score, therefore Microsoft goods are eligible to be bought. Before, particularly when that happens, it means then we get things like economic stability on our side of the house. But then secondly, we get things like access to services for these particular middle class individuals, while also helping them to coordinate with the higher class individuals. Now, how does that inherently tap into what is in their best interest? Now, we tell you that what is in their best interest is to have a better kind of access to services that they want, but also to have an incentive for them to also to keep on doing these particular services, to keep on doing these particular moral acts in a way that inherently also enables them to actually earn from doing it. Because for a long time, these particular individuals have been moral, they have been honest, they have been trustworthy, but then inherently we are now getting a narrative that no matter how honest you are, no matter how nice you are, no matter how charitable you are, you will never develop. Life will still hit you hard, and then inherently that is a whole bad narrative, because it takes away the incentive for these particular individuals to keep on doing it much as they have those beliefs. But then thirdly, we told you that since these particular individuals have that belief of how society should be moral and should have respect and honesty and whatsoever, and at a point in time they do not see an incentive as to why they should do it, it means they're going to go against those beliefs. Why that is very dangerous is because at a point in time people go against their beliefs. It means status quo does not inherently have a reason as to why people should have beliefs in the first place, because it means those particular individuals will then not see a reason as to why they should have a credit score, they should have moral credits or whatsoever, and then that particular time it means then status quo does not stand to be a status quo that inherently can actually develop and actualize and help these particular individuals as well to self-actualize in society. Because not only is society demanding like at a very, very high rate, but also these particular individuals are being being undermined, and they are being actually they are losing hope of actually the reason as to why they should have these particular things existent in status quo. But then also lastly, particularly even if they are to talk about like if they sell them, a lot of individuals will do crime in status quo. We tell them, hey, we feel particularly a lot of individuals, since this is a moral society, they need these sort of things like prestige and competition. But then also, even if they were to not happen, we understand that the people who are to buy these particular things were supposed to be rich people. Now, these are already rich people who have already a kind of influence on government and policies. It means even if you do not sell anything to them, even if you do not sell a credit score to them, they're still going to commit things and still get away with it. It means then they do not buy these things because they need to have things go their way, because they need to do crimes and get away with it, because they already have a kind of a mechanism or a way of getting away with it, because they have money and they have influence and they have individuals that are inherently they can bribe and corrupt and get away with it and not be held accountable by law. Before then, that particularly gets preempted and should not appear anywhere else. But then thirdly, the basic thing that we debate in today's debate is the best interest of the actor. And then at a particular point in time, that team affirmative does not tell you, that team negative does not give you a clear reason as to why the middle class individuals should not engage in this, given their situation and given status quo. I rest.
All right, the House thanks the first proposition speaker for that fine speech. We are going to welcome the first opposition speaker. But then I think this is the last time I'll be introducing you guys in. I think let's just do this like marathon. If a speaker is done, the next comes like that. If you're not audible, I'll unmute and tell you. But just assume I'm listening for the time being so that we move on smoothly. So from the first op down to the last speaker, let's just make it marathon. All right, thanks. So we can welcome the first opposition speaker.
I'm going to assume that I'm so clear. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Pano, the thing we get from government is that in a world that is striving to actually be morally right and just, it is very fine for you to do anything, let it be morally wrong in most instances, as long as it earns you income, as long as it gives you money. We think that is wrong. We think that's not the world that this debate strives to create. But you're going to get 3 things from my speech. The first thing is going to be a clash on context, and I'm going to justify why necessarily our context from Op 1 has to be taken throughout the debate. Secondly, you're going to get the new setup, and then thirdly, you're going to get 2 arguments from my speech and an argument from Ian's speech as to why at best, even if we are to take government, they won't necessarily fulfill the interests of this middle class person. The first thing on setup, Pano, we think that a middle class person is necessarily a person who wants basically 3 things. 1, they want peace, they want harmony, but even thirdly, they want justice in the fact that they have a certain level of importance attached to them. Noting that in most instances are basically everyday people. They just possess a moderate level of income. They can access their basic needs using that moderate level of income. And at most, why they want that peace and harmony is just to have their stable occupation and enjoy life and opportunities as it should be. What does government tell you that you should do in such an instance as a middle class person? It tells you, much as you may strive to be morally just, they think from their end, as long as you sell off something, regardless of the after effect that will happen to it, and in most instances, to be something that's morally not right, they are fine with you. We think as a person who's striving for peace, harmony, and importance attached to you, we think that won't be wrong. We think society, as far as optics are concerned, won't view you as wrong. The first key thing you need to look at here is who are they selling to? I just want to categorize this point into two categories. Firstly, they are in most instances selling to people who are majority or most times oppressors. We think that these are people who look like dictators. We think that these are people who look like terrorists or human rights like abusers. We think that's not right. Secondly, we think in most instances they will look at selling people who are evil in the pretext that they commit crime. The incentive or why this is most likely going to happen is these are people who have a drive basically to buy these credits because they want to hide the wrong that they will be doing. Now the clash or the comparative then becomes here. how will this be looked at before they sell and after they sell? Before they sell is what happens in opposition's world. Before they sell, these are people who will be looked at as morally right. These are people who will be trusted, and in society they will be held at the utmost importance. We think that this then satisfies that interest of importance that they be looking at. When you flip it over and look at government's world, in a world where after they sell, we think that the optics on them don't necessarily look right. Why? They'll be looked at people who are greedy, they'll be looked at people who are very unjust, and they won't be trusted. They'll even lose the little that they have because society won't accept them. That's as far as context is concerned, because it creates a leveled ground. Panel, what then do we get from our argumentation? It's going to clash most of the argumentation we got from Prop. Prop tells us that for these people to get that certain level of leverage that they actually need, they should necessarily sell it off. This brings up to the first argument about how this selling it off is morally unjust. The theory here is that we think that as a middle class person, if you need to get an importance attached to you, society must view you as a person who's actually morally upright and not someone who in any way would want to propagate something that's morally wrong. Just 3 strands of analysis here on morality. Firstly, we think for morality to be considered, or for you to be considered as an esteemed person in society, you need to be able to do something that's morally reciprocal. But no, notice you earn these credits when you actually do something that's morally right. We think then it is unto you, and you must then, in such an instance, for you to be a morally just person, or even intuitively speaking, you must then do something that's actually morally right in return, and not in any way sell it off to a person who do something that's morally unjust. At such a point in time, would not sell because it is morally unjust. Second thing is about shining a torch on crime. We think it would be wrong for you in any pretext as a middle class person for you to actually sell this token to a person who's going to hide crime, such as Bill Gates, and make him look as a person who's actually so fine and have no crime. We think at such a point in time it becomes morally unjust. Second thing, or the second strand here, is then on the optics. What then does it look like when you actually sell? We think you lose trust from society. We think society doesn't regard you. We think you don't get that importance that you would have wanted, and that is your interest as a middle class person, and that is a leverage you would have had. That importance that you lose when you sell off. Thirdly, is about the potential for abuse by buyers. But no, we gave you a whole clear context on who these buyers will look like. We think you increase that. We think we increase actually the potential for these buyers actually abuse the morality that actually enables you to stand as a person and that gives you dignity. At such a point in time, the impact on you is so heavy that everyone society looks at you as a human rights abuser in and of itself, because literally you're engaging in the crime by ensuring that it's perpetuated. At such a point in time, as far as the interests of a middle class person are concerned, we don't think it would be right for them to sell. On to the second argument. Second argument is how this person then gets self-importance. The theory or the thinking here is that this is a person who is very comfortable as far as they live, and they would want to actually perhaps get something that elevates them in society in order to enable them compare themselves against the rich people. Okay, 3 strands as to how we achieve this as far as analysis is concerned. The firstly is that the person gets importance attached to them as far as this credit is concerned. But no, I need you to look at this moral credit or the whole debate room. We need to look at this moral credit as something that is actually precious. Why? By the fact that it's able for you to, by the fact that you are able to actually exchange it in order for someone to do something that's wrong. This is something that's precious. We think that this is something that cannot be easily acquired. What this necessarily means is by the fact that
He or I?
hold something that's precious, that's something that becomes very important to you. Yeah, Prop, I can take your point now.
So assuming all that is true, can you prove to me that when individuals sell their particular goods, they do not restock?
But necessarily, and this actually drives into my other strand of analysis of this argument. Why look at how it is far much better for you to amass these credits and why that then becomes actually beneficial. But now notice on a comparative here. In our world, you amass those credits. In props best case, you actually get these credits and sell them off. The difference here is now the importance that's attached to you and why this importance then becomes beneficial to you. Okay, we think if you are to amass these credits, you think you get a certain level of importance. That means that you'll be regarded as an icon in society. That means that you're able to get that money that government say this middle class person earns. What you get from this whole strand of analysis is that even in hope, if this person is not to sell them and amass those credits, then this person what he benefits in the long run, and what is far much more sustainable and better is that they get regarded as people who are actually important. They start feeling dignified. They start feeling as utmost top-right human beings. At such a point in time, when you have all that self-importance attached to this middle-class person, with this is very just and as hope, we shall not sell those credits. Panel with this, proud to oppose.
Okay, so I just want to confirm if I'm audible so that I can start my debate.
Yes, boss, you're loud and clear.
So if I'm loud and clear, I'm going to start my debate in 3, 2, 1, shoot. The only problem that I have with opposition is that they actually think that at a point in time when these middle class individuals go ahead to necessarily sell their credits, that they are only necessarily going to sell them to people who are terrorists or to people that are necessarily dangerous to the community. Why I think that is actually superficial is that it does not actually mean that when you're necessarily going to sell off your credits, you're only going to sell them to someone who's going to be able to do bad things within society, right? But even if we charity opposition and then we take them on their best, let us look at a world where we are going to have individuals actually be able to access this sort of like credits at the expense of them making crimes. Why that actually becomes more better than a world where they don't actually get to sell is that, notice, most oftentimes these terrorists or criminals that go ahead to necessarily commit crimes are people who have high influences within communities. These are people who have already dominance. These are people who have like high sort of like power to necessarily go ahead and influence their policies or actually influence their actions within status quo. That is why you have a lot of terrorists or a lot of crimes that happen within government itself, and then these people are not actually being held accountable. Why that actually is more dangerous than the house is that, notice, we think we actually still live individuals living bad lives, living actually depressed lives at the expense of them still making actually crimes. The beauty with that side of the house is that at least we necessarily get to sell them, and actually these individuals that the individuals that necessarily go ahead to sell their credits at least actually get some sort of, even if there is a likelihood of the crimes necessarily happening, we still think there is a utility that then goes back to community, right? But then secondly, I think you need to understand what middle class people inherently look like. One, we think these are people who necessarily have a moderate sort of like income. But secondly, these are people who have most times lived up depressing lives, wanting to necessarily reach a certain sort of like services and they cannot necessarily afford them. Why this actually becomes important is actually neutralize where team opposition tells you that the best interest of these middle class people are probably things like importance, are probably things like acknowledgement, or even actually peace. But why we think these things are not actually gotten from the side of the house is the ideal. Notice, we don't actually get a clear importance. We don't actually get a clear picture on what that importance necessarily looks like, because we think the mere fact that these individuals have now these credit scores and they can actually gain them through probably doing things like charity, we think that is already importance enough they have in status score, right? So we don't actually clearly get what sort of like importance they should have when they necessarily keep this sort of like records. But secondly, it doesn't ideally mean that when people go ahead to sell their credits, they're more likely not going to be able to do more charitable things in status quo. The idea is on one, should these individuals be able to now necessarily sell these credits at the expense of them necessarily losing them? Why that becomes important is that, notice, these are already good people, right? These are people that need to access things like social services and probably better high standards, right? So at that point in time, they have the ability to necessarily sell those credits. It is much more better for them to necessarily contain them. Why that actually becomes more better is that they at least now get to necessarily achieve the other sort of like things they wanted to necessarily achieve in the side of the house. So I'm just going to do some sort of like rebuttal on what opposition then tells us, right? Opposition tells us that, you know, they think that major reason as to why we should not necessarily they think that major reason as to why we should not necessarily sell our credits. Second,
why is your case mutually exclusive? I.e., I think all those benefits can be still maximized, not at the cost of selling the credits.
The only problem that you get from your side of the house is that you think selling these credits is initially going to be like a bad thing within status quo, just because you assume that every other person that is going to be sold these credits is going to do bad things. What we're telling the side of the house is that even on the likelihood that that actually may happen, it is actually much more better than a world where these individuals contain their credits and still the same crimes are necessarily going to happen. Why that is actually much more better in the side of the house is that you actually sell these credits to these particular individuals and they actually get some sort of like utility out of them. In the side of the house, you still have these crimes happen because individuals have the influence to necessarily do them at a particular point in time they want to necessarily pursue them and they never bought the credits from anyone. Why that actually becomes bad is that you make status quo necessarily look bad. In the side of the house, when individuals when individuals now have the time and the chance to necessarily sell them, you're more likely then actually go ahead and get utility. But secondly, that was on the assumption that you thought that everyone they sell these credits to is going to do bad things in status quo. There is also the idea that people who more likely are going to come to buy these credits are probably people who have businesses, probably people who are rich enough, right? Now, what rich people necessarily need are things like respect, are things like prestige, are things like image, and these are things that you cannot actually use money to buy, right? But these are things that are oftentimes just gotten within status quo, right? These are things that are actually credited by people themselves, and how people credit this is on the amount of now credits you necessarily have because you actually live in a moral society, right? Why this becomes important for them is that they can actually go ahead now to make their policies to influence people and societies in a way they want, if at all they have now that sort of like image. And like you said in the house where you assume that everyone they necessarily sell them to is going to necessarily do crimes. But secondly, on the comparative still, you need to understand that there is a whole world where we necessarily don't get to sell this. Where that becomes dangerous, is that you have now individuals who still have their credits, but they don't benefit them. Now they actually live in a world of oppression where they actually get to do good, but they don't actually get enough importance as why they necessarily do that. In the side of the house where we necessarily sell them, you actually have these individuals go ahead to access some of the things they more likely want to necessarily achieve, right? But secondly, it is on the idea that these individuals still, whether or not they sell them, they still need to access some certain sort of like services they necessarily want. Why we think that becomes dangerous is that if they still have these credits and they cannot be able to use them to get probably other things they would necessarily want to get aside their work, right? They're more likely going to resort to doing more bad things with status quo, right? Because and understand the idea of having the credit is that you can use it to necessarily perform bad things and you're not actually going to be accountable, right? So we think if these individuals now have these credits and they cannot choose them to do things and they cannot probably sell them for money, they're going to use them to do worse things like they're actually going to go rob banks, they're going to go and kill people for money, and they're not going to be held accountable because their credits can actually protect them from that sort of like violence. In that side of the house, when individuals now go ahead to sell them, we think we have a much more utilized sort of like society where that sort of like crimes don't inherently then happen in and of itself, right? Sure. I just want you to look at this simple comparative. In a world that uptells you that selling this food is much more detrimental because have terrorists, that is like a superficial one. But still, secondly, even if we argue that on that best and we have these individuals, this sort of like credits being sort of things like terrorists, we still think that is much more better than a world where we don't actually sell them. Why? Why that is actually much more better, Chair, is that these terrorists still have influence. Whether or not they have these credits, they will necessarily go ahead to front their works because they need them, because they actually have influence, because they have money to necessarily influence their policies, right? And the beauty of a side of the house is that when they now buy these credits, at least they give back to these smaller sort of like middle class individuals at the expense of them committing the crimes, rather than a world where they would not actually give back to the middle class people and they will continue to necessarily carry crimes. But secondly, there is a likelihood of a world where still these other middle class individuals are now going to use those credits to perform much more sort of like bad things, because probably robbing banks, probably are killing MPs for money, because the credits are now probably protect them from those sort of like crimes. We think that is a much more detrimental world than actually a world where they could have just sold them for money. But secondly, is on the idea that these people that this is actually a completely moral full society, right? That means that the individual that now has a lot of high scores is oftentimes predicted as a cool person, as a legit person, as an elite in society, right? Why that becomes important is that when these individuals get to buy them, they actually be able to now necessarily improve their image. They actually have the incentive to necessarily make a buy-in policies or people to buy into their businesses because they're actually cool people. They're legit in those sort of like societies, right? It doesn't ideally mean that they're actually going to use them for making crimes, right? Why that actually increasingly becomes a better world is that you have now a lot of individuals who want to necessarily do good because you actually now give value to those credits. In a world where we don't sell them, we don't get actually the value of credits, except using them to commit crimes when the only incentives to get away with them. In the side of the house, we actually give them real value. We sell them to people and use them for what they have.
Your
In
time
the
is
side of the
fast spent.
house, there's nothing that you actually get out of it.
All right, so I'm going to begin this speech, but before I do, kindly ask me a POI as I advance into my extension. Hope no one badgers, and I think I'm loud enough, So I'm going to begin this speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Panel, we think that it is not right for actions like charity to ever be exchanged for harmful actions like theft, because that in and of itself undermines our very reason for existence. We oppose. 3 things you're going to get from this speech. First is on characterization, secondly is on rebuttal, thirdly is an extension with the second logic to victory from opposition. To begin with, I think they clearly misunderstand what this middle class person exactly look like. I think this is one who can ably achieve basic living conditions, who wants to ideally live in the best harmony with all the individuals in society. Secondly, this is a person who cares about what they get. Fourthly, and most crucially, these are individuals who not only care about what they give, but also what they get from society. That's the first context that they lack. Secondly, the fact that that is true means that these individuals have a higher incentive not to even sell these particular credits, because the perception then changes. That was the argument that came from first, but it hasn't been engaged in. These people are now perceived as bad. They are perceived as people that are sources of crime, because realize that the use for this credit in and of itself is for doing or is for carrying out morally questionable actions such as theft and murder. That is why even when second probe comes to claim that individuals that are going to buy these sort of credits are going to be rich people, and those rich people are going to use them to get respect and all that, it honestly doesn't make sense, because it misses the point in the info slide, which inherently tells us that the spending is done on morally questionable actions. What that then means is that it requires us to justify who is more likely to buy these credits, because we need to look for individuals who have a more use for these individuals. I think on a comparative, a rich man has less need for these kinds of credits in comparison to a certain man like maybe Assad of Syria, or those criminals basically that exist within society that always want to justify their actions that are always against humanity. What does that mean? It means it removes the whole idea from their case on how most likely rich people are going to buy them, because we are able to prove to you why the likelihood of people that are detrimental to society are the ones that are going to buy them, i.e. these people want to legalize their crimes and they don't want to be held accountable. But even secondly, the whole idea that comes on why these individuals must get economic stability, why they are striving to get more, and how they're going to get better living standards. 3 responses to that. One, I think this isn't mutually exclusive, because it can be achieved in other ways. I mean, these guys can work, these guys can engage in different jobs. They can honestly get better ways of income rather than doing something that would perpetuate a lot of harm within society. Secondly, I think it is worsened on prop, because at that particular end, when people change the way they view you, opportunities change. Notice that these are individuals that care about opportunities they get. These are middle class individuals, a normal person that is employed within Uganda, within America, that sort of thing. What that means is that at a point in time, you're not able to get opportunities. You do not maximize your life. Even the basic needs that you've been trying to get do not get, like generally cannot afford them, because you're probably fired from your job, or you've been given less living conditions by your bosses, because they have changed their moral perception of you. That was important, because it is the extent of the whole pragmatic argument that we got from prop, even when they didn't have any principle. Now, another thing to understand is in the level of argumentation you get from opposition. One, we tell you this person in and of himself wants self-importance. Second, and most importantly, this action in and of itself isn't morally correct, and therefore wouldn't fully maximize the benefits that that the individual would want to get in his life. Thirdly, and most importantly, is the extension that you get from my speech, which is why at best even selling those specific credits doesn't fully satisfy the middle class person's interest. Before I go any further, I will take any POI. 3, 2, 1, go. Pano, the claim of this argument is simple. For you to reach satisfaction, you need constant supply of what gives you that specific satisfaction. Notice that for you to earn this credit, you need to do good things, i.e., you need to do a lot of charity. What then is the likelihood that if you're this individual who does those good things for the specific purpose of selling them, what is the likelihood that you're going to continue doing these things? We think in and of himself, he's generally going to be disincentivized because he's getting any other sources of income that he can get and all that sort of thing. What that then means is that that sort of action can never be sustainable. Reason being, there is no incentive for you to continue doing good and bad at the same time. You honestly have to choose a side, and oftentimes people choose what is bad because that is how they are going to like better maximize money and all those sorts of financial interests. That is important because it shows you the extent at which propositions arguments can never be sustainable, i.e., even if they wanted to improve their financial standards, economic stability, it is still not sustainable. Secondly, and this is important because it is on the perception of society, you're going to get a lot of backlash from society. Why is this true? Because you're generally considered an accessory to crime. The impact of this is simple. Once you've carried out this sort of selling and transaction, you're then going to be harming more people, and those very many people in and of themselves can backlash because they see, oh, this is Ian who normally does that. He's the person that is causing justification of actions that are done against us, which are really bad, and they always cause us bad conditions. We think that perception in and of itself is not good, and it's something that would never allow you to maximize your happiness. Thirdly, let's analyze the system of sale and purchase of this moral credit. Note, you need to first do good and earn the credit, then sell it. That in and of itself is not sustainable because prop doesn't guarantee to us that you're going to continuously do good in order for you to sell those particular actions. So we can agree that even if prop was right, still the harms that exit out of that system outweigh the benefits. What are the impacts of this particular argument? One, you're able to know that we should generally care about people's perception of you because that is what gives you the opportunities as a middle class person. Secondly, we're able to show you why it is more than just this person, why whole society as well matters, because it directly infringes on what this specific person does in his life and in society. With that said, it is the extent of the principle of the pragmatic argumentation you get from our side of the house. So we can agree that on a comparative, our side provides a better and highly stable living, comfortable living, and most importantly, maximizes the happiness of the particular person because we're able to show you how they live without fear of being attacked or without fear of being harmed. But even most importantly, I want us to look at the use of these specific credits. We think people who buy these specific credits could be harmful people. These are people who want to justify their actions. What that then means is that they can use it to harm even your own neighbors, to harm your own family members. They can harm anyone, and guess what? They will never be incarcerated because it is legal. It has been legalized by the credits that they have. So I think that in and of itself shows you how their side perpetuates the highest level of instability, how they do not care about society being cohesive, but most importantly, how they minimize the happiness and self-actualization of this individual at a point in time that they do not cater for all the incentives that this person generally should have and how they should live their life to the better. So at the end of this debate, we are the only side that better shows you why this individual is going to be better without selling these credits. But even secondly, why selling of those credits, even in the best case of proposition, would become more harmful to this person and to the society. And with that said, incredibly proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, I'll assume that I am perfectly audible and I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Pano, I want you to notice this one thing that the opposition has failed to give us. Even though they come and say that this sort of credit will give you somewhat importance in society, what they don't give us is then what is going to happen with the credit. How am I going to use it? And moreover, they fail to totally look at the particular stance of the middle class individual and go and broaden their view, looking at how impactful the society is going to react. I mean, We have seen such instances. I mean, don't rich people get money and their lecturer retaliated against. I mean, they just got money. That's just a simple stance to show you how timid society is against how people's stance actually is. What I believe we should actually consider is the best interest of the middle class individual. Which are the main things I am going to focus on in this debate with the clash points? One, I will continuously engage on what has been given to us by side proposition, which I will consider as their burdens and take their best with that stance. We are looking at three things here. We are looking at one, the peace, the harmony, and the justice served by the middle class individual as per their best interest. And then maybe in addition to that, I will prove to you why we do not really believe that importance is. In addition to that, I'll first prove to you why we do not believe that importance is something really that we should consider. Panel, one thing we told you from the first speech we had in this debate is that at the end of the day, this middle class individual finds himself in a stance whereby he may need to earn more and may need to actually earn something to pursue what he wants. That is to say, his standard of living, a better standard of living. We gave you a description that at the end of the day, this is someone who actually needs some sort of financial security. At the end of the day, this is someone who looks up to the rich people because he is in between poverty and being rich. So at the end of the day, he wants to reach a higher stance, or he wants to better his standard of living. And he's not going to better his standard of living by just looking good. No, he has to find a particular stance. And my second speaker already told you that these are people who have already tried their best to how get other jobs, and even though they try to get those jobs, we still take it at an extremist level that they have failed to get these jobs, and they actually have something in their pack that can help them at the end of the day acquire this sort of income or whatsoever. That is to say, in this moral credit society, they actually would sell this moral credit. Why in the first stance? Firstly, justification on why this importance would not be important is because at the end of that day, these people will find that they actually want to earn more money. So they will, in an extremist stance, they will decide to be like, you know what, this importance is actually not very important to me. I actually need to survive. I actually need to improve my standard of living. I need to improve my financial security. These are middle class individuals. You find the debt, they will take on that extremist stance and decide, you know what, let me actually sell this moral credits so that eventually I may benefit from this or may actually have another source of income. Two, we already describe them as people who eventually at the end of the day find that they are morally upright at this point, because these middle class individuals really have no time for nothing else. The only thing you find them doing are one, they will be working, or two, they'll try to show their humility and maybe be in charity organizations which will actually afford them this credit. So at the end of that, we find that we are justified to sell the credits for such as that, and that importance is actually something that we should not consider at the end of the day. Two, I'm looking at something considering peace. One, how do you expect this middle class individual to actually have peace at the end? Looking at the clash points now, how do you expect this individual to actually have peace at the end of the day? Yet he's actually broke. It is actually in debt. We find that at the end of the day, on their world, where they totally clash out and do not consider the fact that this middle class individual is not benefiting, they will not have peace at the end of the day if they are totally broke. I mean, I've already told you that their financial security is at stake. They actually need something to do. They actually need an extra source. Yes, even though their side claims that they may have jobs. I mean, all in that suit, these guys go through the same old processes. They have their jobs and whatsoever, but the government excessively taxes them. These are where most of the taxes go to. It's actually a real world science that they fail to accept and they fail to consider on their world. Although I believe it's obvious, it's something they have to consider. Point taken.
Middle class individuals are rational and care about how they are perceived and what opportunities they get from the community surrounding them. Why is that context then still consistent with your argumentation as to why they would still go ahead and take on this immoral act, given the fact that there are millions of other moral businesses that they can take in place and assume the same level of income or even better?
No, we don't actually believe that, first of all, selling these credits is immoral. I don't even know where this whole stance comes about on side opposition. One thing they have failed to understand is one, these acts, this world that they're actually living in is not different from the rest. There's always an immoral stance and there's always a moral stance. So at the end of that day, even though their side tries to tackle this, their immorality in their world will still exist and will still prevail, because even though you refuse to openly allow them, even though you refuse the implementation that we have given them, because at the end of the day, we find that if we allow them to sell it, it would actually be a better option than them going into, let me say, using other sources or using other plants to actually sell credits. Because you're not going to find them just saying something that they find useless. Yes, you may say importance, but I've already showed you that importance is not really something that is beneficial at the end of the day. So we find that it's not very important to consider.
Point.
So that is my main response to that. So two, looking at them, if they actually
Point,
want where they
Peter.
cannot even cooperate, we find that an extremist stance as per side opposition, if they actually want to achieve this harmony, yet at the end of the day, they do not have something to sustain them, you're going to find them in the same immoral actions that opposition is against. So at the end of the day, we find them still clashing with their third thing, which is justice, which we find that they will not actually inherently perceive or will be able to get at the end of the day. But on our side, why we believe that if we
Point, speaker.
eventually sell these moral people, we are going to one achieve this piece of the individual, because I believe this is the most vital part of at the end of the day. And two, as per our side presented, that we will actually believe that at the end of the day, we will find that financial security is very much vital. So financial security and peace prevailing is the main thing that we should focus on at the end of the day. Then considering that harmony and justice is actually something that you will find at the end of the day clashing out due to the reasons that I've shown you. So what? I believe that another thing that we should mainly focus on after those two things, that is, say, financial security and maybe the peace of the individual, is that at the end of the day, even though side opposition at an extremist stance claims that these actions are immoral, yes, I still, yes, we totally accept that. First of all, we believe that this moral credit society is like any other society, just having an implementation of which people can actually earn credit to be able to, sorry, these people can actually earn credit to be able to, prove their moral stance in society. But one thing that side opposition fails to understand, that at the end of the day, this society is like every other society. One, it's going to have the immoral and immoral part of it. That means that there are stances where people are going to be morally right, and there are stances that where people are going to be immorally, what people are going to be totally immoral. So what we believe that at the end of the day, these people who are moral actually decide to sell them. These most so the middle class individuals at the end of the day are actually benefiting from such a stance. Unlike their side, where they totally forget that at this point in this moral credit society, we have decided to totally focus on the middle class individual, and they want to broaden their perspective to say that at the end of the day, he's going to care about certain factors such as sort of having some harmony and justice at the end of the day, forgetting that at the end of the day, this person will not be peaceful. This person is financially
Point.
unstable, and we believe that at the end of the day, it is very important to consider side position on this debate. I guess.
Okay. I will presume I can be heard. Yes. Okay. I will just a second. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Chair, from the start of today's debate, we give you reasons why we think people who buy moral credits are mostly immoral people, but we get no piece of context from side affirmative to why they think that people that are going to buy these moral credits are not only rich, but are also good people. They do not give us any sort of analysis as compared to what we give you, which means they inherently concede to the analysis that we give them. Chair, you're going to receive 3 things from my speech. 1, I'm going to name out for you the clashes in today's debate. Secondly, I'm going to weigh these particular clashes and show you why our side inherently wins. But before all that, I will do a comprehensive rebuttal on their case and show you why we exclusively win this case from our side. There are 2 major clashes in today's debate. The first clash is which side tends to bring out higher levels of self-actualization. The second and most important clash is the clash of which side has produces a higher economic well-being, or which side produces a higher level of financial security.
But first and most importantly, down to rebuttal. What do we receive from side affirmative's house? Side affirmative, first and foremost, tells us from their first speaker that people need more money, so they will turn to things such as murder and they will turn to things such as murder and theft. So that is why they need them to sell their credit scores. Chair, why is this less likely? One, because there are other sources of income. All my speakers engage with the idea that there are other sources of income, but side affirmative neglects the argument of there are other sources of income and keeps arguing this particular argument. So, Chair, we think that that argument is already out. Why is this particular rebuttal important? Why is this particular rebuttal important in the debate? It takes out the idea that people will be constrained and they have no other reason or no other area to get a sustainable source of income. Sure, we can understand that these credit scores can get done, which means that at the end of the day, it's not a very sustainable thing. Sure, if we look at things like selling it, like giving out your kidney, you only give out your kidney twice or once. You need a kidney. So at a point in time, some of these credit scores might not be immersed ever again. So at the end of the day, these moral credit scores are something to put into consideration today. Chair, another thing we get from their side is that they have an incentive for people to commit these good things continuously from their side. But we say that this incentive is much more on our side. Why? Because from our first speaker, we tell you that one, we increase individual importance and self-actualization. So people are going to be more incentivized to come and commit these good things because there is a sort of importance attached to it. But second and most importantly, with the idea of low sustainability of income, we think that there will be higher employment trust. Reason being, when a person comes and he has a high moral credit score, an employer is more likely to employ them because they seem to be people of trust and can run a business without theft. That means at the end of the day, they are more likely to get employment and get sustainable sources of income as compared to what side affirmative gives. And last and most importantly, we're likely to have things like higher, just and equitable society, which in and of itself is one of the metrics that we characterize that are the incentives of a middle class man from our first speech. Why this particular rebuttal is important is because it removes the idea of them having an incentive, a higher incentive than us, which puts an idea that we have a higher incentive for them to continuously do good things than they particularly have from their side of the house. Another thing they particularly tell us, which is quite funny, is that the bad people can still have influence, so they should commit their crimes and give back to society by buying these credits. So terrorists can buy these credits, and it's the way they can give back to society. Why is this particularly detrimental in the debate? First and foremost, there will be higher crime committing against these particular middle class people, because these terrorists are going to be considered innocent people, so there will be no deterrence mechanism against them. So these people will continuously bomb these middle class people, kill these middle class people, and finish these middle class people only because they are being given, or only because they are receiving, only because they are being considered as innocent people, and there is no sort of deterrence mechanism against innocent people, which in and of itself is more detrimental. And then secondly, as our first and second speaker told you, there is likely to be a poor perception of these people, and there will be backlash against these middle class people for giving such credit scores to people like Al-Qaeda. Chair, at that point in time, you're going to be regarded as an acquaintance to a terrorist. That means there will be backlash. Why is this important in the debate? This is important because it removes the idea that these bad people, or it removes the importance of any good thing these bad people would be giving back to society. And secondly, it also removes the incentive for these middle class people to certainly sell their credit or their moral credit scores. The last thing we get from side affirmative is the financial security. Chair, I'm going to just take it down in one strand. Chair, we think financial security is more in our side. Why? We tell you that we have a more level of sustainable employment, because when employers trust you, when an employer knows you're a good person, you're likely to get employed, and employment is likely to last a long period of time. That means at the end of the day, you have a more sustainable income compared to their side. We're only going to give a one-time credit score. So it will only happen once in a lifetime, and it won't happen particularly again. So at the end of the day, that's harmful. We win the clash of economic or financial security when we wear their best case against their worst case. Their best case gives us one thing. They'll give money, one-off money from their credit scores or their moral credits. But from our side, we have a more sustainable income through high employment support. Through us giving higher employment support, there will be sustainable income because these people can get jobs. That means at the end of the day, on comparative, even on our worst case, we have higher financial security. And lastly, we win the clash of self-actualization because on their best case, the only thing they can give us is more money and better living standards. But even in our worst case scenario, we can give you peaceful existence for these middle class people. Secondly, they can have higher levels of prestige and importance. And then third and most importantly, there will be reduced oppression against them because people will be held accountable for something they have done wrong. And at the end of the day, as Side Affirmative has said, people will invest into buying these moral credit scores. That means these moral credit scores will have a higher level of prestige. So the higher the level of prestige, therefore the higher the level of prestige, that means the higher the importance that is attached to them. So these people will be credited important people in society. We win, they fail to engage with arguments such as how it strengthens our self-actualization, such as how we give power to these people. So at the end of the day, we find them failing to engage with arguments like how it earns self-importance for these people, on the principle on how it is morally not correct. They do not engage with the principle and give us a way up of a better principle. And thirdly, we engage with them at best why selling this does not satisfy the middleman's wants, which means that at the end of the day, we have high levels of respect from society. They do not engage with that, and they do not engage with the idea of backlash, which puts that at a higher footing than them in this particular debate. With this, Chair, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, set my timer. Okay, I'll be starting my reply in 3, 2, 1. Panel. At a point in time when government necessarily fails to claim or prove exclusivity to any of their claims and impacts, we think they don't deserve to win this debate. 3 key things I'm going to run my reply on. Firstly, on plausibility, whose world is most likely going to happen. Second, on the magnitude of impact on either side's case. And thirdly, on who achieves the interests of this middle man. Firstly, on plausibility, whose world is most likely going to happen and whose world is most likely going to be accepted. Firstly, I just want to tackle the whole notion of to whom these credits are going to be sold to. Government runs a whole assertion of we think they won't necessarily sell to these evil people. Our response to that, and it's not tackled entirely, is that in most instances, the only person who would actually want to buy these credits or who would buy them in a large pretext, the person who's going to actually commit things that are immoral, such as theft, such as anything. At such a point in time, we'll prove to you that this is most likely going to happen because of the incentive for that end to actually manifest. What this then means is that government actually promotes immorality and the harms that come with it, as we showed in our case. Then the debate comes to, should we keep or sell? Pano, at such a point in time, and as I started my speech, in a world that is striving to actually at least achieve morality, at such a point in time, and intuitively, we would not sell. The second strand, or the second basis I want to talk about, is magnitude of impact. And I want to divide this into 2 things, on good versus bad. Firstly, on whose world necessarily gets the good. Pano, we think at such a point in time when you actually attach importance to these sorts of credits, and you make sure that people who are actually get the certain sorts of credits are valued highly, at such a point in time, you're going to get people actually doing more and more things that are morally right, so that they can get these credits and have that importance. At such a point in time, we think you get a sustainability for morality better, versus the bad, whose world gets it worse. We think that happens in government's world. Why? Because necessarily you ensure the sustainability and continuity of this morality, because you have a basis for these people who are actually doing wrong things fall back on, and that happens when these middle class people sell their credits. Lastly, on who achieves the interests of these middle class people. Pardon. This entirely relies on which world shows the mutual exclusivity of their benefits. Government says that necessarily why they would have this post sell them is because they need a certain other source of income. Two things we give you and two things we give you in response. Firstly, that it is morally wrong, or in no way would it be that you can't necessarily have any other source of income that may be good. We tell you that. We even tell you that is a pretext that you are so busy as government wants to assume or allege, and you can't necessarily do anything else. The fact that you are able to actually amass these credits is enough for you to have that other source of income or other source of actually importance. But even second, the fact that you amass these credits and then get all that sort of importance attached to you, we think more opportunities are open to you. But even secondly, when you're actually arguing for contracts as we are laying through our world, you're able to get for much better high paying opportunities, or even secondly and most importantly, get that opportunities, and that is very important. At such a point in time when you have that exclusivity tied to our case and also the other impacts we rent to you, we think that is far much better. And think as anyone, as a normal sounding person and a self-conscious person, you will not want to sell those credits. But with that, we have been very proud to oppose.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Chair, we feel particularly if the debate is centered in a world that they tell you that when these particular individuals don't sell their stakes, when they do not sell their credits, they are actually going to be individuals who have importance in society. Why that is inherently very wrong is because if it was like that, then these would not be middle class individuals, because with a good credit, then individuals, if at all what they say would actually be right, they would have respect, they would have honor, they would have trust. It means individuals would trust them with contracts, they would have jobs, they would not struggle at that because they would be labeled as trustworthy, honest individuals, and therefore they would be rich at the end of the day. But then at a particular point, they are not rich individuals, they are middle class individuals. It means there are people who are struggling for a better income, for a better way at life, for a higher kind of level that is supposed to elevate them. Now, let's earn some credit scores by charioting the other team. Let's look at the whole case. They say, hey, these particular individuals are going to look bad when they sell. We feel that is inherently wrong, because at a point in time you sell something, it does not mean you sell your whole shop out. You can sell half of it and stay with the half. Why that is important is then you can still earn a job. And it's called restocking. Particularly then also, they tell us about how we have crimes, how these particular individuals are going to be doing crimes and whatsoever. We tell you that these are individuals who are going to be selling to the rich people. Not only can the rich people risk to actually have their credit score actually decrease by spending them on crimes, because they still want individuals to buy into their products, to trust them, that these are good individuals. It means particularly if Samsung and iPhone are in a race, and then we see that the CEO of Samsung's credit score is reducing, it means then we know that that is a person who is untrustworthy. We feel particularly these billionaires are not going to buy into that because they'll lose into customers. Then what happens? We tell you that these are individuals who are going to be getting this particular score in order to keep it for things like prestige, for things like buying, for things like marketing for their particular products. They tell you, hey, there are people like Osama bin Laden, there are people like terrorists out there, and they are going to buy this because they don't want government to retribute you. If particularly at a point in time people become terrorists, they don't care about how government is going to hold them accountable, because they don't hope to be retributed by government. No, they hope to destroy it to the ground. Particularly, we feel that makes no sense. But then inherently, even if they talk about rich people and how they want to do crimes, so particularly these are already individuals who have money and policies and connections and have already and always been using these particular connections to get their way out of particular crimes that they do. It means then they do not become very gullible to actually buy these credit scores and actually use them. But then thirdly, they talk about how these particular individuals need peace and importance, the middle class individuals. We tell you cannot have peace without money. They say, hey, you can get other jobs. We tell you, hey, they are fixed already. But then also, even if they were to get other jobs, we tell you that they're already doing 3 or more jobs. But even if they were to do other jobs, it means the whole time that they had would not exist. It means they no longer do charity. Why is that? Because these are the most people who do the charity, who do the moral, full stuff in society. It means you take away that whole aspect on your side of the house. But then secondly, you talk about how you want to give them importance or whatsoever. But then inherently, we show you that they are in a status quo where they do not have money. And when you do not have money in any status quo, you're not important. Therefore, they do not have importance and they do not have a role in status quo. At a point in time, they do not have an incentive as to why they should do this and even gain from it at the end of it all. But then thirdly, they talk about how particularly, these are all things that are inherently very dangerous to society. We compare that world, let's charity them. We compare a world where billionaires are going to be doing crimes and a world where the biggest number of population is going to be committing murder in order to earn a living, in order to earn extra money, while also deteriorating the things that they believe in for just money. Iris.
Okay, the House thanks the speakers for such a wonderful round. I think it was a great round, but unfortunately, this is a silent round, so I won't be giving you your results. But then I think after the tournament is done and the results become public, you can feel free to reach out to me for either personal feedback or how the round went in terms of justification of who won and stuff like that. So in case the tournament is done and your results become public, any of you can feel free to reach out to me in my DM or anywhere. But yeah, this was a lovely round. Thanks, guys. Good luck for your next rounds.